So are we good to go? Very good. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've got the approval of the memorandum of the May 3rd, 2021 regular meeting. A copy has been posted. Councilors, any questions on that? We'll make a motion to approve then.
Second.
Second from Councilor Melton. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The memoranda of the May 3rd, 2021 regular town council meeting is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we've got request to speak on agenda items. We have sort of tweaked this a little bit, just so everyone knows, where we're taking requests to speak on items that we are talking about on the agenda today. I've got 3 requests to speak, although one individual wants to speak during the public hearing. So we'll start with Mr. Robert Padden. If you want to come up and give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes after that.
Good morning. My name is Robert Padden at 640 White Oak Court in Zionsville, Indiana. First, I want to publicly thank Mr. Lance Lawrence for taking the time to come out and visit our neighborhood. Honestly, it's probably the first time I've interacted with a government official in about 29 years of living at 640 White Oak Court. And I just really appreciate that he came out and saw firsthand what was happening. I've lived here at 29 years of watching 2 government entities fighting out over plots of land between Zionsville and Whitestown before annexing and having Zionsville annexes, I think sometime in 2010. My family and I have raised kids through the Zionsville school system, Stonegate, Boone Meadow, Zionsville West, and Zionsville High School. And we have watched the fight for everything from Royal Run to the Anson development, and more recently, the annexation of lots of land, even west of I-65. In our specific case, we've watched the development of Shannon Springs, the enclave Stonegate over these years, all wondering when and how our little neighborhood of Eaglewood that nobody knows exists would ever get sewer. City water came, I think, in 93 or 94, which has been awesome, to be frank, but the sewer always has seemed elusive and surrounding us at each new development was built. Starting in February of 19, I began to converse with Barry Cook, wastewater and superintendent, via email to understand the potential for hooking up to sewer for the line that was proposed to run along Oak Street, which is literally being dug as we speak, to prepare the street for, I assume, the north-south connector, as well as probably a new subdivision in the old horse property across the street from us. But then things went silent for a while, and I think Barry's no longer with the town. And so I started to reach out. And then some, I think, in the administration may have taken offense to some of my emails just because I copied a lot of people, only because I was seeking answers. And so if I offended someone, I apologize for that. But I'm really just hunting for answers of what the process is for such matters. And after multiple attempts, we did get the response from Lance, and he came out, and I appreciate that. So today I'm just before you. I'm asking, I'll be honest, in some ways begging you to create a process so that we can understand, as the residents of Eaglewood Estates that are literally in sight of a newly laid sewer line, to achieve 2 goals. One is just an improved communication between us, the residents of Eaglewood, so that we have some idea what is happening and what is not. In 2019, it was inferred that we'd be able to hook up to the Oak Street sewer sometime in 2020. And then in 2021, and now it appears maybe 2022, 23. And help us understand, too, the process that we need to follow to make those connections to Eaglewood actually happen.
Mr. Payton, that's your 3 minutes. Thank you. Appreciate your time today. I've also got Kylene Varner. If you'd like to come up, please.
Morning. My name is Kylene Varner. I live at 814 Eaglewood Drive, Zionsville. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for having me here today to be able to speak with you. I'm speaking in favor of bringing the sewer to the Eaglewood Drive Estates area. So in January of 2019, we began talking with Barry Cook regarding bringing the sewer project to us. This was as soon as we learned that the Oak Street sewer project was coming. So today, my request of you is to simply take the poo-poo away. Eaglewood Drive feeds into the Eagle Creek watershed. Many of our homes have struggled with our septic systems. We step out of our homes many a day due to the lovely smell of eau de toilette. The odoriferous smell of effluent is not a desirable bouquet. Residents of Eaglewood struggle to do laundry, wash dishes, and flush their toilets. It's not because we're physically incapable. It's because our finger systems are failing. Our yards are wet with effluent through July. Effluent runs from our failing fingers into our neighbor's yards and into the Eagle Creek watershed. That's right, our effluent is percolating through the ground and making its way to the watershed for all of Indianapolis to drink. Yummy. Let's move on to the topic of home value. When my current finger system finally groans its last effluent bubble, we will be forced to install a sound mound system. You see, my land currently holds two finger systems, one failed and one failing. Our soil has poor percolation and there will be no option but the mound. It is in the town's best economic interest to bring us into the 21st century and simply take the poo-poo away. The day will come when my husband and I must sell our home. No potential homeowner is willing to pay a reasonable price for a home with a BMX racing looking septic mound in their backyard. Let's take a look at the example of 820 Eaglewood Drive. 820 Eaglewood Drive is a brick ranch on a nice sized yard. In August 2015, it sold for $160,000. In May of 2018, it sold for $215,000. In that 2018 purchase, the landowner determined that the septic system was failing and could not inhabit the home. She installed a $33,000 mound system. Now, just so you might wonder, that's going to last for about 15 years. She sold the home in December of 2019 for a total of $203,000. That's right, she took a $45,000 hit. She will not be the only one. There will be others of us that do this as well. Again, I request that you take the poo-poo away, invest in the watershed, invest in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, do we have anyone pre-registered online? Okay. We will move on. Any mayor administration updating?
No, I do not. Joe, do you have anything there? Okay, no, we do not.
Okay. We have no old business. First new business is a consideration of a Zionsville Town Council procedures document. This is something we've sort of long talked about. This is just putting together and sort of in place the procedures of everything from request to speak to duties of president, vice president. Nothing really changes here for the most part. It's just a matter of making sure we're all on the same page and everyone can see it. So it didn't necessarily require a vote, but I at least wanted to have it out as a vote just to make sure that we're all have an opportunity to not necessarily in agreement, but at least to vote on it. So any questions on any of this, Counselor? Or Adam, I know you're sort of thrown into this. Anything to add to that?
No.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I guess it goes more to legal. Any issue with us just voting on this, putting in place, given our current legal dispute?
Any issues with voting?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because it does outline authorities and things in the procedures. I just want to make sure we're not going to end up regretting taking a vote on this.
Well, I don't have I can't tell you what'll happen in the future, but I don't think there are any issues with voting on this.
Very good. Any other questions, counselors? I'll make a motion to approve this document then.
Second.
Second, Vice President Plunkett. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The town council meeting procedures are approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. They're also available online if anyone is interested in what those look like. Next, we've got the Oak Street Sewer Project update. Mr. Lance. There's no vote on this today, just an update from Mr. Lance on this.
Thank you and good morning. while I'm connecting here, I'd like to take a moment, if I may, and introduce to you a new town employee. Mr. George Lewis is our new town engineer, who's been with the town now for about 2 weeks, and his very strong background in wastewater is going to serve us well, given the comments he just received. So we're very much looking forward to his added capacity and experience contributing to our team. All right, thank you for the opportunity this morning to bring what information we have to you and to start to have some public discussions, which is a nice segue from the comments you heard earlier this morning. So to facilitate this conversation, I put together a quick map, and just to get everyone oriented, the left-right road is Oak Street. On the right side of your screen is the new north-south connector and the roundabout project under construction. On the left side of your screen is the signalized intersection of 800 East and Oak Street. As you know, for about a year, we've had a sewer project under construction along the north side of Oak Street, represented here by this green line. This is a gravity sanitary sewer in this area of the project, which carries effluent back to the east. When that is installed, and we will get onto some timelines here subsequently, anyone with direct access to that pipe, frontage along Oak Street, will be able to connect to that pipe if they need to do so. One project that has grown out of necessity, as you are aware, there on the left side of your screen, we are under design for the next roundabout at 800 East and Oak Street. And as a result of that project, at least one property owner's septic system will be rendered useless as a result of the roundabout. We are obligated by law to make that person whole. We either replace a septic system, which is not practicable on this property, or we provide an alternate means. And this will, in this case, will require a low pressure force main. Now, again, that green line, gravity, big pipe, no mechanics to it, flows downhill. Yellow line, small pipe, requires forced pressure pumping to utilize that system. That's, of course, obvious to me, to some is because it's the topography, right? We're going downhill. We got to get back uphill, so we got to pump it. Once that line is in, again, anyone with direct access to Oak Street and along that pipe project will be able to connect if they need to that low pressure force main, which will be sized to accommodate all of those homes as well as a handful of others off screen. And of course, what you heard this morning were some residents who are very frustrated, and we owe them as much information as we can give them so they can plan accordingly. But when this Oak Street project was first developed, of course, all these flanking areas were looked at preliminarily to make sure that based on the number of homes, that everything was sized so that future projects could be accommodated by the Oak Street sewer project. It's pretty simple. We got a sewer running up into Eaglewood Estates. Now you'll notice on that purple line, there's a line type change there to the west or to the left in the smaller dotted line. That again is where the terrain begins to fall off downhill. So from that area to the west, it is anticipated that will have to be a low pressure force main. Again, small pipe, needs pumps. Eaglewood Estates would then have service connectivity to all lots within that subdivision, as well as some odd lots that kind of hang out to the north. We will make sure that those are accommodated with this design. Moving back to the east, we have White Oak Court. Again, simple pipe up the road, gives those folks connectivity. And the same with Sycamore Court, pipe up the road, gives those folks connectivity. So when is all this going to happen? Yes, the $1 million question. The Oak Street project that's currently under construction. I never like to speak ill of any of our partners, but we have to wrestle routinely with utilities on all these projects. We have basically been at the mercy of Vectron's schedule since last fall. Sometime in September, a conflict was identified between a 6-inch gas line and the future route of our sewer. And it was determined that Vectron needed to get out of our way. Since that time, we've been working with them, wanting to get a schedule. That schedule initially had them showing up as early as April 11th, but their start time has been kicked back. And the latest as of early this morning, I've heard, is a June 2nd start time for Vectron. So what does that mean? Vectren has about 3 weeks worth of work to relocate their gas line, after which there is about 60 more days of construction on the sewer project. Now, those are not an entirely linear processes. They can overlap, but I am not going to assume anything is going to go well on this project based on its history. So we are looking now at a mid-August completion for the Oak Street Sewer Project, which would put it in service and restoration complete, assuming that Vectren holds to the latest information they've given us of a June 2nd start time. The areas that we've talked about this morning, well, before I get to those, this low pressure force main I mentioned, which would be an extension next year. As I mentioned, that is part of the next year's roundabout project, and it will be constructed in 2022 as long as the roundabout advances. If the roundabout does not advance, we don't have to put this sewer in, but I think all of us agree that we would like to find a way for this roundabout to advance. The areas then we heard about this morning from Ms. Varner and Mr. Payton, Eaglewood Estates, White Oak Court, Shivmore Port. A preliminary alignment was done, which is basically a sketch on a page back when the Oak Street Sewer Project was being developed, again, just to make sure that there was capacity in the Oak Street Sewer to accommodate all these flanking neighborhoods. So how quickly can we get sewers into these subdivisions? We need to complete the preliminary alignment, which is 1 to 2 weeks. That's just about done. The real work begins with survey. All right, so you can see there on the screen for each task, we put a rough timeline. So it looks like we could get, assuming we move along smartly, make decisions wisely and timely, we could be under construction in 12 to 16 months. Now, depending on the type of sewer that goes in, this could be a 60 to 120 day install. That information is forthcoming, and I'm looking forward to having some more conversations with you, because these are the types of conversations that should have been had back when the sewer works bond was originally approved in 2018, 2019. There should have been a master plan, a master fiscal plan for this entire area, and a timeline laid out. So I wanted to bring these conversations to have with you publicly, because I think they're great. Some talking points then. As I mentioned, the preliminary approach to these was to get a gravity sewer service wherever possible, and only revert to a grinder pump system when necessitated by terrain. However, a gravity system is the most costly and the most time consuming, both in design costs and installation costs. And you will need to have some discussions on this, because it will come to you to establish rates based on the type of sewer that goes in, because you are allowed to recover construction costs with each utility customer who receives direct benefit from that pipe. Now, typically that is spread out over 20 years. Again, I'd like this morning to remain high level. We'll focus on the timelines that are achievable, and a very high level preliminary discussion of some future finance discussions that you're going to need to have to determine how we're going to best serve this community. Now, the residents can choose, and I'm going to say this with one caveat. There is what's commonly referred to as the Parrot Law, which requires or allows a municipality or utility to require someone to connect a sanitary sewer when that sanitary sewer is within 300 feet of their property. That is a state level law, it's not local, and the town has never, and to my knowledge and history, invoked that requirement. So the approach has always been, you can connect when you're ready. While there are people who are demanding service, you will also hear in the next couple of months, as we have these discussions, from people who absolutely are fine, who don't want sewers, don't want rates. We're going to hear all sides of all issues. But let's keep that in mind, that historically the town has never required connection. We put these in place and allowed people to connect as soon as they need or as late as they need. What we're going to do for you is to present some options for the lower cost, low pressure force main systems. These are the small diameter pipes that require each resident to purchase and install an external grinder pump system to their home. Now, typically these are much less. You heard some costs about mound systems and septic systems, and we can all agree that they're not the best for our environment. A grinder pump system is going to run 12 to maybe 15,000, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more per household. But when you compare that with a $30,000 septic system, it's still a bargain. So these low pressure force mains require each homeowner to purchase this pump when they're ready to connect to the septic or the sanitary system, excuse me. Now, these are much quicker, as I mentioned, in design and construction, because a gravity pipe needs to be straight, it needs to be sloped, anything in its way has to move. These low pressure force mains do not rely on gravity. You are not constrained horizontally or vertically. You can serpentine these around the things that are in your way, so you don't put yourself in the position of having to be at the mercy of utilities to get out of your way. So they can be installed much, much quicker. One common theme among sanitary utilities is that they will, in order to get a lot of coverage quickly, they will just put in these low pressure force mains, and that's it. They will not seek cost recovery from the construction costs, because they're typically a half to a third to even more less expensive than a gravity sanitary sewer. You might be looking at around $250 a linear foot for a gravity system, and you could be down around 100, 110 foot for a low pressure force main, depending. So there's a good cost savings. So this is going to be a decision, I think, that the town is going to need to make. Do we cover a lot of ground quickly and put in these low pressure force mains, or do we go with the good old standard reliable gravity and sewer line? So again, you could offer anything without cost recovery, but typically these utilities throw in these lower cost force mains and do not seek recovery of construction costs from the ratepayers. And again, I will repeat, residents can choose when they need to connect. So that's what I bring to you this morning. Just as a highlight, we were looking at mid-August for completion of the Oak Street sewer project, and assuming we move along in a timely and stay on track with the schedule for any of these flanking areas, we are looking at construction beginning about a year or so from now. We can accelerate that if we look at and consider these low pressure force mains that can be put in lesser cost and much more quickly. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, or more realistically, make note of them, because I've already given you all the information I have this morning, and I don't know what else I can pull for you. But I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion and bring this out in the open. We will try. I have committed to Ms. Varner and Mr. Caden that we will build a more robust information section on our webpage where we can follow along with the phases and steps, and we can see their hurdles that need to be overcome, and as well as the accomplishments and achievements as we reach each milestone. Any questions?
Councilors, questions?
Lance, for the record, I was hoping that you could give us just an update on the neighborhoods that are going to be to the east of your photo map that you showed us. Just kind of some dialogue on that. I know you gave us a lot of good information to the west there, and we had some people that represent that area, but I just am curious that if we could get something out there about the north side of West Oak to the east of the map that you.
Both north and south with, say, the Russell Lake area,
Yes.
Sharon Drive. This morning, those areas that I showed you are representative and where I've heard most of the clamor for service. However, all of those other areas along Oak Street will be following the same parallel timeline to present to you financial outlooks and opportunities. So the areas we look at today were just kind of representative. Anything off screen is also included in the schedule.
Thank you.
Lance, when you're putting in those smaller pipes, are those the only homes that will ever be serviced by them? In other words, I always fear we put in a cheaper, smaller pipe now and then realize we need more capacity later.
No. Yeah, good point. Good question. Absolutely. They are, like every sewer, they are sized to accommodate the number of homes that have to connect. So when I say smaller diameter, because these grinder pumps basically macerate material, you're much more liquid. So you can, 10 homes on a gravity line can be served by a 6-inch line. 10 homes on a low pressure force main can be served by 1.5 inch. So it's all capacity based on the number of homes that need to connect. So no, we're not going to short sheet anything here.
Is there any service life difference between forced and gravity?
No.
All right. Any other questions, councilors?
Yeah, Lance, can we do, you mentioned the
the Eaglewood, the line that would run through Eaglewood
Yes.
would happen after, obviously, the Oak Street project was completed.
Yes.
Is there a way to do that simultaneously? I mean, can we, if we feel like that's something that obviously many of the residents want, or some of them at least that are emailing us, and is that something that could happen at the same time?
No, unfortunately, that sequence of events that I enumerated on the screen, those still have to happen. So I'm saying we're starting right now. We're in the process with the finalization of preliminary design. We can't skip any of those. So the timelines are independent of each other.
All right, thank you.
All good? Thanks, Lance.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate you reaching out to the neighbors too. We've got a consideration of an ordinance vacating a portion of a public right-of-way. This is the PAR request. This is a first reading. This is ordinance 2021-07. Mr. Kilmer or Mr. Andrioli? Oh, there you are, Roger.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Roger Kilmer. I'm one of the planners for the town of Zionsville. I want to give a very brief introduction to the requested vacation, and then we'll turn it over to the petitioner's representative. Before you is a request to vacate a 56-foot long section of a 15-foot wide east-west alley located between Oak Street and Pine Streets. There are three unique aspects to this alley vacation I want to point out to you. First, typically when an alley is being vacated, you're going to have two different owners involved, one owner A on one side of the alley, owner B on the other side. In this case, the petitioner owns both parcels on each side of the alley. So with this vacation, it would essentially result in one large lot that would be merged with the vacation of the alley. The second item is that in recent vacations, the town typically retains a perpetual easement for utilities. This would not be applicable in this vacation. Even though there is a sanitary sewer and manhole in the area to be vacated, the petitioners had an opportunity to meet with Lance out of the site, and the petitioner is making a commitment to relocate the manhole outside of the area to be vacated. So therefore, that would not be impacted. The third unique aspect of this request, typically we don't have any remonstrators on vacations. And in this case, we do have some remonstrators, and I know that they are present to speak also. So with this, I'll close my comments and turn over to Mr. Andrioli to give his presentation.
Thanks, Roger. Good to see you in person.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Kilmer, for giving a preliminary staff report with regard to this. This does come to you with a favorable staff report from the staff. I represent Nick and Jackie Parr. Nick is here today to answer any questions that any members of the council may have. Nick and Jackie own the property at 985 West Oak Street. It's probably familiar to most of you. It's a kind of a smaller property that sits back. It's got a little turnaround off of Oak Street. It sits fairly far back off of Oak Street, quite frankly, and it's not a very large house. The Parrs have 4 kids, 4 young boys that will be growing up in this particular area. So they're currently living in that house, but basically squeezed in because it's just simply not a very large house. They also own the property at 990 West Pine, which is immediately behind that property that's accessed by Pine as well as the alley that would separate the houses that are facing Oak Street as well as the houses that are facing Pine. There's an alley that runs back behind that. They would like to connect up the property that they currently own and the house that they currently own on West Oak Street and add an addition to that that goes into the West Pine Street. And there's a lot of advantages, we think, for the neighborhood with regard to that. Mr. Kilmer indicated that there's remonstrators. As far as we know, there's one remonstrator. And the one remonstrator owns a lot immediately adjacent. I'll go through a packet that I left with you that we can take a look at real quick. They own the property and lot immediately to the east of the Oak Street property. And they can be serviced by the alley as well, getting back to their property. So essentially what has occurred, once we filed our petition for alley vacation, we went and talked to the park board. The park board owns the property immediately to the west. There's nothing to the west of either of these two lots, whether it's 990 West Park, other than the rails, the trails access. So we notified the park board to make sure the park board didn't have any problem. There's a letter in the packet that I provided, as well as what we filed with our original filing, that indicates that the park board has no problem with this particular vacation. The next hurdle was Mr. Lance took a look at it and indicated there's a sewer back there. I suspect serves a lateral for the property that they own it on West Oak Street. And that would have to be moved and relocated. We've prepared a commitment with regard to that we will go ahead and relocate that. Lance was kind enough to meet us out at the site with our builder. We looked at the areas of where it would be located, and the builder's in the process of preparing construction drawings and all of that. Any approval with regard to this would have to be subject to Mr. Lance full approval of the design, construction, and inspection of a particular new manhole that would be located pursuant to the discussions that we had with him. So that would necessarily need to be done in order to make sure that he would be satisfied. We left the language general because whatever Mr. Lance tells us we're going to do, we're going to have to do in order to make that work. So we don't think there's any impediments. There's no difficulties with regard to getting it done. It's just making sure that the design and the construction and the inspection go smoothly with regard to the relocation of that. The advantages to the particular vacation, I think it's 15 feet by, what did it say, 56 feet. There's no access to the rail trails from that particular area. The rail trails comes off of Pine Street and other streets, but there's no access to the rail trail. In fact, it would not be a good idea to try to access this because it gets fairly steep on the one side of the property. What the PARs are proposing to do has several advantages, including for the remonstrator. And I think Mr. Parr has talked with him, but hasn't seemed to be able to convince him that this is probably going to be good for him, but it really will be, because what the PARs plan to do, instead of putting two houses, the house on West Oak Street that it currently is in existence, their garage is in the back that's serviced by the alley. And then if they would put another house, keep that house or sell it, and then put another house on the West Pine, that house would be served by the alley, and we would have garages back there and access back there. In essence, what would happen if the alley vacation occurs, they're going to connect the two houses or connect the one house with an addition that I'll show you here in a second. And all access will come off the Oak Street driveway cut that they currently have and they currently use. So their garage will face, when everything's done, their garage will face the rail trails, and they will access a road down from Oak Street with sufficient width to have plenty of parking, off-street parking, and they will access that, and no additional access will occur from on the alley from either the West Oak Street or the Pine Street. So you're not putting more cars on it. You're really lessening the traffic and the access to the vacated part of the alley. The PARs have talked to the neighbor immediately adjacent. I've got a letter indicating their approval. I'll give that to Amy. And indicating they don't have any objection to this. They're the property immediately to the east of the West Pine Street lot. And they have no objection to this at all. One of the concerns that was raised, we understand that the Williamses may have owned this property for 16 years. I think the only access they use it for is perhaps to mow it when they come up there from the Parr's observations. They indicated there was difficulty in trying to back out of their area that doesn't have a garage right now, but just trying to anticipate that. And Mr. Parra, who has a very large truck, a crew cab, went out there and pulled into this little gravel area that they've created in the last week and backed out with no problems. I took my SUV and did the same thing. There's just simply not going to be any problem with them backing out of their driveway onto the easement. The easement's 15 feet wide, and we're not vacating any of the easement behind their property, not 1 foot. So they have full access and full use to that. And our property, when we actually build a house, if we're allowed to do that, it will be well off that property line. So there's plenty of room for them to be able to access that. The other thing is, in the packet of materials that I provided to you, one of the first colored pages is the back of the Parr's property. And that's Mr. Parr's vehicle. He can actually, and because of the angles of this, it's not a real fair representation, but he can easily back out, and there's a garden right to the right. He can easily back out his big vehicle into the easement area and then drive out. So nobody will ever have to back out of any of this particular area at all. They can basically back out of their drives, turn around, and if you're gonna put a house next to us, you're surely going to have some type of driveway accessing the garage that you're going to put back there. If in fact you're going to put one, then in essence you're going to be able to turn, have a turning radius, which no problem whatsoever to be able to go ahead and back out. In fact, for the homeowner who, the lot owner who lives next to us, there's several advantages because he'll be able to park back there, including if he needs off-street parking or otherwise, because there's no access coming from our property. Our access has been eliminated and we're going to be coming off Oak Street. So there's not going to be any other vehicles that's going to be utilizing that particular area. So he's got room to park vehicles there during events or whatever else, because he doesn't have to worry about blocking the easement itself, because we're not accessing it. We're accessing it off Oak Street. The other thing that's, I think it's significant, and I'll be very brief. If you turn to the picture view of 990 West Pine Street from the alley, you can see that there's some recent gravel put there. There's a big power pole there and it looks like electrical service. That's what's currently on the southwest corner of Mr. Williams's lot. So if he's going to be putting a house there, or he's going to be putting a driveway into a garage, that will have to be to the east of that particular power pole. So there's plenty of room to be able to go ahead and get turning radiuses around through there. And again, if you look at the house, that's the garage of the property adjacent to the Parr's lot, that's owned by the veterans who gave their letter of support. You can see the area where they have their driveway and they have plenty of room to be able to access and get back through there. And the same should be true for the property immediately adjacent to it. So I might tell you that the gravel that's been put in there that you see with the power pole and otherwise, that was just put in there this week. We don't know why it was put in there, but perhaps Mr. Williams will have an explanation for that. It's never been there before, but it's there now. But bottom line is we utilize that gravel to be able to pull our vehicles in and then easily back out of that. So he won't have any problems with regard to being able to access that. As far as the design.
Mike, we almost done here.
For me?
We're wrapping this up.
Yes, right now.
Right.
There is the design if the house is approved, this is the little area of turning radius that he has. This is Mr. Williams's lot. The red hatch is the area of the easement, and as you can see, we're going to be building over that, subject to this approval. And then here will be our garage for access off Oak Street. So there will be no further access either off Pine or off Oak Street for any of those two lots back in the alley. We think that's a benefit, a public health and safety benefit for granting this particular proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mike and Roger as well. This is a public hearing. I have proof of publication. For those that want to speak at the public hearing, I have one notice. You do not need to fill in a notice to speak. Mr. Parr, you would be up first. Oh, go ahead. You're welcome to come up first too. Yep, you've got 3 minutes. Just give your name and address for the record. That'd be great.
We'll need more than 3 minutes.
Well, that's the rule for the remonstration is 3 minutes. Okay, Mr. Barr. Same rule, Mr. Barr, 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Chris Parr. I am currently live at the 985 West Oak Street here, and I appreciate your attention to this today. We've been looking to make movement on some plans with this for some time, and we just appreciate the consideration for the discussion of backing out in between our two properties. And I just, from my standpoint, wanted to point out that is something that we're most concerned with, is that having our children in play, you can see that that area is heavily used as it is right now. That's basically what I want to show. I think that he had done a fine job in explaining the rest of the details there. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Would you like to go now, or I've got an online speaker if you prefer to wait? Joe, we've got a remonstrator, I think, online, Danielle Tucker. Ms. Tucker, if you can give your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Sorry, I had to unmute. My name is Danielle Tucker, and my address is 950 West Pine Street. We bought our house here in 2009, and since that time, we and others have used the public alleyway. I don't know about vehicle use because there are encroachments there, but we have used it as a public greenway. Several neighbors, including those who do not have property that runs along the alleyway, have used the main alleyway. And now I'm starting to wonder, we also used what we believe is an alley running north-south, or park property running north-south along the west end of the Pine Street property to access the trailhead on Pine Street. So the former owner of the petitioner's house actually used to mow both portions of the alley for this use. So they'd mow down to the end of the alley, the main alley west, and then would go along the western edge of where the trees and things are above the trail, along the Pine Street lot for her use and others' use. It was a safe way for the kids to get by bike to the trail without having to ride their bikes along on Oak Street, or on Pine Street, I'm sorry, along 9th Street to Pine Street. So we would use it for that. And I know that several of our other neighbors also use it or have used it to walk their dogs over to the trailhead. And we would like to continue to be able to use it in that way if there really is alleyway along that north-south corridor along the western edge of that Pine Street property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
My name is Angela Williams, 975 West Oak Street. And it was my understanding that I would have up to 15 minutes today to talk, which is consistent with when you go before a variance request and you're a formal remonstrator. So I would ask that you permit me to speak more than 3 minutes. I have more than 3 minutes of material that clearly shows the reasons you should deny this petition, but will also show a complete lack of consistency and transparency that you will need to know before you make a decision that the town will be held accountable for. May I have more than?
You got your 3 minutes, but there's a second, if there's a vote on here, and stop this, I'll let you restart. There's a second meeting. If this was to vote to move forward, you'd have a second chance to remonstrate against, as if anyone else who wants to share thoughts, you may want to give them.
What would the time limit be, or what would that be?
It's always been 3 minutes per remonstrator.
Okay, some conversations that I had leading up to this meeting with the town.
Well, this is the council, it's not the town.
All right. Okay, this alley is still an active alley. It is absolutely essential that the alley remain a public alley for us to safely ingress and egress from our property. During the purchase of our lot, we established our garage location as you can see in our variance that was approved. We had a site plan that established our garage would be located 5 feet from the west and south of the alley and the Parrot lot. You can see that on the site plan. We had it planned for more than 15 years. There is a utility pole on that lot. It has always been our plan to move that utility pole to the west in the alley. We've met with Duke to have them work up a new arrangement. It seems as though they may be able to, but we're awaiting a bid on that. So I'd be very curious to see how Mr. Andrioli and Mr. Park backed up their car from the location that we're planning to have our garage with a utility pole there. They simply used the available space that you can see right now today to try and back up their vehicle and claim that we can back up our vehicle from where we intend to when we build. The Zionsville Planning and Zoning Code 193 specifically prohibits permanent dead ends for new subdivision construction. So you can clearly see that that is not something that is permitted. What we're looking to do is a hammerhead turnaround. And according to Mr. Lance, the Department of Public Works, he said that the clearance requirements for a hammerhead turnaround are not described for Zionsville, but general clearance is 1 car length, which is variable, but when designing parking lots can be interpreted as 18 feet. You will see that we do not have 18 feet from our property line or where their potential property line would be for us to back out of our lot. If you vacate this alley, we will be forced to back out of the alley approximately 265 feet. In the legal description of the area to be vacated on the petition, it appears the Parrs are requesting a portion of land that extends beyond the existing alley and is owned by the Zionsville Board of Parks and Recreation. We discovered documentation this past Thursday, 4 days ago, that clearly supports this. When looking at deed record 239, page 666, 667, the legal description of land includes a portion of the land the Parrs are petitioning to vacate. This deed is dated June 7th, 1991, and is a quitclaim which the railroad donated railroad land to the Zionsville Board of Parks and Recreation. The quitclaim stipulates the land in the legal description must remain park land. Because of what we have recently discovered regarding these transactions, we're in the process of hiring legal counsel.
Thank you. That's the 3 minutes. Appreciate you coming up today. Are there any other speakers on this public hearing? All right, I will close the public hearing. Counselors, questions you may have for anyone we heard from today?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, and I don't know if maybe Ms. Williams, if you could, can we have her come back up if we've got a couple questions?
You've got questions,
Back up, please. I've got 3 or 4 questions. Just specifically, do you use the alley access the alley to access the rail trail currently?
We do not use the alley. Well, we do not currently use the rail trail or the alley to access the rail trail.
Okay. Do you know if there's a plan to allow access either around that property, or will you guys go down to Pine Street, out 9th down to Pine Street to get to that if this happens?
Well, some of the information that I was going to present to you today would show that that land should still remain parkland, which in case, yes, we would still use that land to access the rail trail.
Okay. if there were an 18-foot, you mentioned the 18-foot setback there, if that were built into that plan, would that change your mind on this remonstration?
Based on what we have found in the Boone County Recorder's Office, absolutely not. They would be entitled, if you vacate the alley, to put a fence on the property line, which would give us only our 5 feet of required setback from the edge of our garage. That means we would have 5 feet from the alley of driveway, just 5 feet of driveway, to our garage, which would be set 5 feet from the west border of our property. If the PARs put up a fence, which they would be in their right to do, that fence would run right along, and it doesn't just run north-south. If you look at what property they own, it would run north-south, east-west. About, I mean, I would say 30 feet, 20 feet, I'm not exactly sure. Because they own lot 27 and 28, it would be an L-shaped fence that we would have to navigate. It is impossible. We would have to back out of our garage the whole alleyway.
I guess my, maybe more direct, if we could build it, if this were approved and we were able to put something in there that wouldn't allow them to put a fence up, that you would have your 18 feet, would that change your perspective of the?
One of the things that I was going to share with you, if I had the 15 minutes that I believe that I had, was that when we purchased our lot, 990 West Oak Street was owned by the Board of Parks.
Right.
And that was a key consideration in us purchasing our lot. From our lot, we had a beautiful view of the rail trail with parkland that should have been protected. And instead, we're now potentially going to be looking at a 190-foot long house. So no, we would not be in favor of any portion of the alley being vacated based on the fact that we purchased our lot for that view.
Sure. And then the last question I have, Mr. Andreoli spoke to gravel.
Yes.
I was out there last week. And I mean, in full disclosure, I couldn't figure out where I was going to turn around. But the gravel, can you speak to that? He brought it up as somewhat of a suspicious situation.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you asking that question. It has been extremely frustrating for 0 people, our neighbors, and the town, when you're doing your due diligence for this to come before you. 0 people have asked us, hey, we see that you own this lot. What are your plans for this lot? When we met with Duke, May 5th, they came out to the lot because we needed to know, is it even possible to move this pole, which has always been our plan, to move the pole, as you can see from the documents we put before for a variance. We've always planned to have our garage in that location. So Duke, we needed to make sure that we didn't absolutely need to have that pole going to the west in the area they're asking to be vacated. So the gravel, Duke said, is Travis Crick. He's on your advisory panel. He said, yeah, you know, anybody can call with the utilities and they could have that pole moved to the middle of your lot in the easement there. So he said, we would have no idea because it's just a vacant lot. He's the one that actually suggested, you might want to get some gravel here just to avoid any future issues. So that is how it came to be that we added the gravel. And again, it's surrounding, I'm not privy to what Mr. Andreoli has shared with you as far as the pictures, but that's why it looks so strange. And you can see that that pole is on that southwestern quadrant, which would be right where one of our bays would be for our garage. And I'm very curious how they back their vehicles through a pole.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
I just want to comment again on the 15 minutes. The 15 minutes is for remonstration. It is not for an individual remonstrator. So each remonstrator gets up to 3 minutes, up to a maximum of 15 minutes, in which case the council can choose to hear more and has done in the past, like in Sycamore Flats. If we want to hear from everyone today, we heard from 3 people. If you were told more than 15 minutes, or if you were told 15 minutes, I'm not sure by whom, but goal of this council is to be consistent with everyone and not play favors for or against. So the 3 minutes, I just want to re-clarify, has always been that way. And by giving you more, it is unfair to everyone else we have told does not get more. So I just want to make sure council is aware of that. And Ms. Williams, you are aware of that. So you don't feel like you're being treated unfairly here today. Counselors, any other questions for anyone here that's presented?
Yes. I'm on my phone. All right. For Roger, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Can we have, Miss Williams was talking about information that she had. Do we have all that in our packet? Can we have that emailed to us or sent to us or dropped off somewhere?
It's for her.
You want all my remarks that I submitted, or what, I'm sorry, what information?
Well, I mean, like,
You have 15 minutes worth of information. Can you email that to us?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be
You
great. Thank
don't
you.
have that in your packet right now, because
I'm
I've
sorry?
never received that.
Right.
We don't have is what she's
Yeah,
saying.
okay,
either.
perfect. Thank you.
Roger, so the online speaker, Danielle Tucker, had mentioned that she believes there to be a north-south alley as well. I didn't, maybe I wasn't looking at the right picture. Is there a north-south alley she's referencing, or is that just something that?
I'm not aware of a north-south alley.
Roger, you aware at all, or maybe Mr. Andreoli, of the request about this, like the Parks Department owns some of this land? Is that anything you've seen in the deeds?
I know that the Parks Department owns property immediately to the west of the Parr-owned property. As for any deed restrictions, anything along that line, I've not seen it. I would be glad to take a look further into the files for that and present it at the next meeting, should this move forward.
Also, just a point of clarification, Mr. Andreoli said that the staff report was in favor. It looked more neutral to me than, because I've seen a lot of staff reports and they usually either say in favor, opposed, and occasionally we get one like this where it's essentially you're not opposing it, but that's also not in favor, correct?
You are correct. I'm glad, I appreciate you bringing that up for that clarification. Yes, staff is not opposed to the vacation.
Thank you.
Any other questions, counselors? So this is just a first reading. So if we choose to vote on this today, there will still be a second reading. Mr. Andreoli, you want to approach the podium briefly?
In the packet that I gave you, there is a drawing that is looking north towards the lot owned by the Williamses.
Mike, can I have one of those copies, please?
For me?
Where, oh, up here.
Yeah,
Never mind.
you
Thank
got it. Thanks. Look at the pole that they're talking about moving. That is not altogether guaranteed that that pole will be able to be moved. That if you move that pole and you move it to the other side of the property, then you prevented or caused the same difficulty or problem that they're alleging to their neighbor to the east. Because that stake there, the white thing right by the building, that's their property line. So if you move it over in that particular area, you're causing problems for the neighbor to the east. In addition, there's guy wires to hold that particular pole because it's the last pole in the particular chain. And those are well to the east or well to the west. So it's going to be extremely difficult to move that pole. The other thing is, very briefly, and about maybe 3 pages back, we've got the area to be vacated. There are 2 10-foot alleyways to the east or to the west of the Oak Street property as well as the Pine Street property. Those have been vacated years ago. So there is really no access through there. Those, if you see the actual survey itself, there's 2 10-foot vacated alleys and access ways. Those have been vacated many, many years ago. So there is no real access, public access to that particular area. And when we got approval from the Park Board, we sent them all of the plans. We sent them the area vacation and all of that. And the only thing that the Park Board wanted us to be aware of was that there is a utility easement in the area, not in the vacated parcel, but on some of their property that may go into the Pine Street property. So essentially, they had all of the plans when they gave us their approval for the vacation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andreoli. Councilors, if there's not any other questions, my thought here is to make a motion to approve this, knowing this is a first reading, to continue the process. I know there are other questions, maybe other information we may get. We'll still have to vote on this again, in which case, if there's something that we do or don't not want to do, we do want to do it, it'll be done. If we don't, then we can stop it at that second meeting. So that's the rationale while I'm making the motion to approve this first reading. Is there a second based on that concept? All right, well, if there's no second, I'll need another motion. You've got to have a thought. Got a motion to deny. Is there a second on that?
Second.
That was from Councilor Melton. So we've got motion to deny, a second. Amy, we do a roll call vote. If you are voting in favor, you are voting to deny. If you're voting against, you are voting not to deny. Is that correct, Amy? Is that correct,
Yeah,
Adam?
I want to ask Adam, though, since this is the first reading, can we deny it on the first reading? Without
sure you
suspending
can.
the rules?
Have you noticed the second public hearing?
No, there is no second public hearing.
Then I don't know why you can't deny on the first reading.
Okay,
Amy, do you want to do a roll call vote then?
sure.
Motion to deny. Again, you're voting yes, you're voting to deny. If you're voting no, you're voting not to deny.
Okay, President Garrett,
No.
Vice President Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
No.
Councilor Choi,
No.
Councilor Cope,
No.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Trailer,
Yes.
The motion to deny fails by a vote of 4 against, 3 in favor. We can either vote to approve or we can vote to continue.
I would like to continue it if we're that close. I think there's a lot of information that's not been shared yet.
Okay,
If it's possible to continue it, I'd like to continue
so
it.
is that an official motion to
Yeah, I would make a
continue?
motion to
Great, I'll
continue.
second that. Second from Councilor Culp. Amy, just in case, do you want to do that again?
Sure.
So we've got now a motion to continue with to the next meeting.
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Cope,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Trailer,
Yes.
Okay, motion to continue passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Amy, since next, or maybe Adam's next meeting will also be a continuation of a first reading. Is it also a public hearing again, or have we had the public hearing on it?
Close the public, I mean, that's up to you.
The public hearing has been closed.
Yeah. then
Okay,
it's-
so if you want to speak on this matter at the next meeting, you can still speak on it. Just put in the request to speak card and you'll be able to speak on it, just so that you remember for the next meeting.
3 minutes.
Yep. Yep. All right. Next, we've got a consideration of additional appropriation resolution. This is a CARES pass-through to Zionsville Community Schools and the Parks Winter Festival. This is also a public hearing and a first reading, and is resolution 2021-08. We're actually going to have 2 different discussions on this, even though it's the same item. The first is on the CARES piece. Cindy, good to see you.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Poor, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for the town of Zionsville. The first one we're going to speak about is the CARES reimbursement. This particular reimbursement, we're asking for an additional so we can pass this along to the schools. We were able to be a pass-through for them to get reimbursed this second time around, which was for safety awareness expenditures. There was a total amount of a little over 88,000 that we were able to request. We, as a town, requested a little less than 65,000, and the remaining amount of 23,334, we were able to pass through for the schools. And so this additional appropriation is will allow us to cut a check and give that money back to the schools. I would also like to ask that Debbie Unger, the president of the Zion School Board, come up just briefly to speak on this.
Great.
Good morning.
Morning,
Thank you
Debbie.
for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and thank you for the cooperation from Tammy and Cindy and Regina May and at ZCS, as well as Mike Schaefer, who I know all of you know, and who we dearly, dearly miss, both professionally and personally. Just briefly, this money was used for the things that we needed to run school. So sanitizers, markers on the floor for spacing, HVAC filters, and then additional technology like voice amplifiers and cameras and such, so that teachers could do synchronous learning. So really appreciate the cooperation. It's another good example of how we can work together to best serve our community, and we really appreciate the speed and efficiency that everyone worked together. And also also another thanks for advocacy on behalf of the schools for future federal funding that was available. We really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. So, well, any questions for Cindy? We're going to kind of then go through Jared's and the open meet, then the public meeting, and then do the vote. So any questions for Cindy or for Debbie on this request? All right, thanks. Appreciate it, Cindy. All right, Jared, do you mind coming up and talking about Winterfest?
Good morning, Town Council. In 2020, the Parks Department surveyed the community and asked what they want from their Parks Department. What do they want in Zionsville? And Zionsville showed up and responded in overwhelming numbers. We hired Pros Consulting to conduct the study, and they said that they had never received so many surveys. So that kind of speaks to the testament of this community and how much they value their parks. 49% of the respondents, or 5,182 households, identified community events as the #1 unmet need in our community, and also the most important to fund and include. So this is a proposition to introduce a winter festival within Zionsville. A rough sketch is kind of looking at a month-long event that invites the community to ice skate out at Mulberry Fields. And in addition to that, we're going to identify additional partners to have other programming offerings. We've already spoke with Maple Lawn about some historic programming on their property as well that people could enjoy. And also reaching out to the chamber and other partners to really build up this inaugural event, and with the plan of making this a tradition in Zionsville. So every year we'll build on it and really make it a part of our community's calendar. So we're requesting 145 from the non-reverting operating fund. So that fund is from historic programs, garden plots, shelter reservations. And we're essentially going to borrow those funds to cover the expenses for the ice rink. And as the revenue comes in from the event for the operation of the ice rink, we'll put it back into that fund. So early projections based on a calendar schedule of operations, we're looking at 123,000 to 259,000 in revenue. And that's based off of 50% capacity with 2 weather days on the low end and then full capacity on the high end. So obviously we assume we'll fall somewhere in the middle. And the objective of this is to fulfill that need and provide this community event so that coming out of COVID, we can all begin to gather safely. And obviously the program would be structured following wherever we are with the CDC guidelines in December. The second objective is to recover the costs associated with the ice rink operations. And then any additional revenue will be put back into that fund to fuel future programming free to the community. So the ice rink will be there, and also our park operations will have free programmings for people to enjoy. And at this time, I'll take any questions if there are any.
Hey, Jared, on your assessment, the revenues are based on what people having to pay a one-time fee or an individual user fee each time they skate?
So how I kind of pictured it at this point would be a skate rental fee, and it's unlimited skate, knowing that most people would probably stay about a half hour. So we could keep cycling those through. The skate rink
can host up to 125 people at a time. So knowing that people will be coming on and off the ice, we'll be able to keep that revolving. Within the projection, Ice America would actually run the operations of the ice rink. These are professionals that do this all over the country. They would also assume the liability of the rink, and we would purchase insurance through them or essentially pay that fee. So the ice rink's kind of contained in its operations, and then the parks would supplement that with other programming and partnerships. So just really trying to maximize our use throughout the month and have a successful event that not only attracts Zionsville, but also the neighboring communities. We did speak with Carmel, and they were actually overjoyed that we would approach this because they weren't sure how they were going to deal with their numbers that they've kind of amassed. So the fact that we could not only introduce this, but feel pretty confident that other neighborhoods would want to come over as well.
What would be, what's the actual fee for usage? What did you?
That was based on $14 for, unlimited skate. I would appreciate lowering that as well. So again, this is asking for this appropriation to secure the ice rink. We have a June 1st early bird special, which those prices would go up, and we're not sure we could secure it. But as we go out in the community, get partnerships, get other forms of funding, I'm all for lowering that price to make it more accessible to everyone.
Did you think through a scenario where maybe if people want a multi-use, they could purchase maybe like a month long and not have to do this individually each time you want to go skate?
Yeah, that is something that did enter my head, I think, over the weekend. And it's just, we have about 5 months to flesh this out. So this is just kind of that first step, secure facility, which is the ice rink, and then go from there and build on this.
Thanks, Jared.
Jared or Cindy, if the revenue for this event is less than the cost, what impact could that have on 2022 programming that uses this revenue? Or is there a balance there that if it only brought in 100,000, we were $45,000 deficit, that it wouldn't have any impact on programming that people are expecting next year?
Yes. So this year we had an appropriation of 25,000, and that's to cover all programming and other expenses associated with that. So should there be a shortfall in that revenue to come back, we would try to absorb that in operating rather than impact this fund.
Okay. Councilors, any other questions?
I have a question. In my packet, I saw that this ice skating rink, if I understand correctly, was supposed to go or will go through an internal review process with the administration. Is that after the approval, or is that, or why has that not gone through the internal review process before you're coming to ask for money, I guess?
Right. So we do need to secure the ice rink with that June 1st hard deadline. So that's really just ensuring we have the facility before we build this special event. We're put together a task force to further build that out, in which when we have our plan fully in place, we'll go before the internal review and receive feedback from the department heads.
I think it was more timing, because if they don't end up using that money and it's been appropriated, it'll just fall back into that fund. I mean, nothing's going to happen to it. So I think it's more of timing of them getting the money appropriated as they finish their process, since they have that June 1st date that they're trying to meet. So if by chance something happens and it does fall through, that money won't go anywhere. It'll stay, it'll stay in that fund.
Thank you. For logistics, I guess, on this. So we're going to be having guests park to come to this, and that will be at Maple Lawn. Is that the hypothetical?
No, we're looking more towards a partnership with the school. That way they're have a much larger lot. School does close halfway through the month of December, so their operations would surely be less, and reach out to them and solidify that as well. We're in conversations with the church as well, potentially to utilize that, contracting out a trolley service to a site that makes more sense. So there's options, definitely details that still need to be worked out, but this is kind of just securing the facility, and then we'll solidify that plan.
You mentioned Ice America. They're going to build and manage this. So we're not using parks employees to build the structure at this point. And
Parks employees will assist with the labor of constructing it with the supervision of Ice America, but the actual operations will be Ice America staff. So we could pay more to have them do everything, or we can work with them and have them kind of oversee and give that check as we do build it.
Okay, I think that you've answered the majority of my questions. Thank you.
Yep.
What's the deposit required by June 1st? If you pass that date and then something happens, we got to back out. Is that?
Yep. So 25%.
Oh, and is that non-refundable, I assume?
I imagine so.
Okay. So we wouldn't get it all back necessarily, although I imagine you're committed. So
Yeah.
encourage you to figure it out.
And this does have the support of the Parks Board from the last meeting as well.
Okay,
So
good.
We're aligned to that.
Good. Do you, you mentioned the 145s for the ice rink. Do you have any anticipation of what additional costs would be for this? I mean,
Beyond that,
Yeah, I mean, so that's just the cost of the rink. Obviously, we got other, to your point, other groups that's going to staff this and insurance costs and that kind of stuff. But do you have any idea what that additional cost is going to be?
yeah, so that is, it's around 200,000 for all together. So if you look, it's 145 within the non-operating, then also the 20,000 within the general fund. And I believe we can absorb the rest of that with our existing general fund appropriation. There are some things that go into this, there will be increased utilities and some costs like that, but I believe we can absorb those within operations.
So this entire project, just so I'm clear, 145 for the ice rink, the remaining amount is, so it's not, you don't expect this to exceed $200,000?
It'll be just north, but not too much further now.
How much north?
207,
Okay.
roughly around there.
So all in, the total project's 207, and we expect about 150, maybe more in revenue off of it.
No, that was the low range was the 123 and then the high range was 259. So, and the low range was 50% with rain days, weather days. So just knowing that there's overwhelming demand for, ice skating, I can personally myself looked up ice skating rinks last year and couldn't find tickets. So knowing that, I feel pretty confident we're going to be much more, 80, 90% percentile for revenue coming in with that. And this, and that also doesn't include special events or there's also these skating assistants, which are made for, they're kind of cute walkers to help kids skate. There'd be potentially a small fee for those. So
Is there an adult size?
What's that?
Is there an adult size?
We might have to build one or two.
Okay.
There you go. So there are additional, revenue possibilities. This was just more of a skeletal base plan to recover those costs.
Are any of these costs a one-time cost that would not occur in subsequent years at all? Or is this, I'm guessing from the temporary nature of the ice rink that it's a $200,000 cost each year.
Right. So, depending on how successful this is, we could have a conversation next year about purchasing our own rink. If storage and all the other limiting factors are kind of checked and making this really a staple of our community every December, or we could rent it every year or, see how this evolves. And if we want to move away from this, Ice America also offers, slides that people ride on inner tubes and other, attractions. So as you bundle those, you get a better savings. Just with this inaugural year, we wanted to stay small, make sure it could be successful, and we'll grow from there.
Will the location of this?
Yeah. What's that?
Will the location of this affect anything to do with the sledding hill out there?
No, looking to put it kind of to this towards the school, between the school and our sports fields. And since these require a subfloor, we're looking at putting in sand volleyball, which can be leveled. And then in the summertime, it's a new amenity and attraction for people to go out to Mulberry Fields. And Cindy brought up a good point. We are going to look for sponsorships as well to further, recover those costs and feel good about this moving forward.
And possibly group rentals.
Yeah, special events as well.
I appreciate it being mostly reliant on user fees because sometimes you hear everyone just wants to say, oh, just get a bunch of sponsors. And then it's so hard to do that. So
Yeah.
Having that is great, but not relying on that, I think, is also great.
Exactly. Yep. Thank you.
A couple quick administrative notes. I mentioned in the introduction, this is a first reading. Counselors, this is actually not a first reading. It's a one and done vote. And also, this is a public hearing. I have proof of publication. I will open the public hearing. If anyone wants to speak on this matter, please come up to the lectern. All right, close the public hearing. Councilors, any other questions for Cindy or Jared on anything?
I would like to ask, since we've got multiple items, that we do a vote on each line item
Yep.
because they can be approved separately.
No problem, Cindy. Happy to do that. So we've got two line items here. There's the CARES ZCS and there's the Parks Winterfest. We'll go through both of these. I'll make a motion to approve the CARES ZCS appropriation. Second from Vice President Plunkett. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The CARES pass-through to Zionsville Community Schools additional appropriation on resolution 2021-08 passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. I will also make a motion to approve the Parks Winterfest appropriation. Second from Councilor Trailer. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The Parks Winterfest additional appropriation on resolution 2021-08 passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Thanks, Jared. Looking forward to seeing that. Next, we've got a consideration of an ordinance to establish an American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ARP, the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, Fund 176. This is a first reading, although there is a request, if it does pass on first reading, to potentially suspend the rules and get it passed today based on a timing requirement. Cindy, anything you'd like to talk about here?
Yeah, I would just like to add that, with this new round of money, the town will be receiving 5.9 million, half of that being sometime this month and the other half being next year. And right now, this is just to set up the fund so we have a place to put this money once it's received. We still don't have all of the details as far as what this money can be used for. We're hoping to have that by the time we sit down for budgets in June, so we can kind of work with this in tandem with the budgets. So yes, it's just a place to put the money at this point.
We're opening a bank account. Councilors, any questions for Cindy on this? Any motions on this? I've been hogging all the motions.
Move to adopt.
Got first with Councilor Burke. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ordinance 2021-08 is introduced on first reading with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Per the request and because of timing, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules. A second for Vice President Plunkett. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion to suspend the rules passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. And I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-08.
Second.
I think I heard Councilor Burke first. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ordinance 2021-08 is adopted on final vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Ray Hall Letterman Langham Racing fee waiver. This is Mr. DeLong. We're seeing everyone in person today. I love it.
Good morning, pleasure to be here. Also online, it's my understanding Piers Phillips from Ray Hall Flanagan Letterman Racing is here to speak as well. But certainly coming to this morning with this request, $58,435 abatement. It is related to fees that have been paid by the organization to facilitate the project that's currently underway. Staff is supportive of this request. It represents what we see as a nominal ask in the size and scale of the project that's underway, the economic development project that's underway. Certainly staff again is here to answer your questions you may have, but again, Mr. Phillips is on the line as well. And we did provide a letter. He did provide a letter over the weekend, which I believe you all have. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Going beyond this, has there been any other abatements on this property? I'm trying to recall.
No, there have not been abatements on this property, and specifically, I can't think of a project that's received one inside Creekside as to abatement.
I appreciate Mr. Phillips sitting on this call, waiting on this turn. Month of May is a little busy around here for them, I'm sure. So any other questions, counselors, on this? Any motions on this? First from Counselor Trailer. Second from Counselor Choi. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing Fee Waiver is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Happy to see that building going up. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other matters? No. Oh, we've got the approval of claims. Claims did come in a day late. It's up to this council to determine if you had enough time to review them or not. They were due Wednesday, they didn't come in until Thursday. I'll defer to if anyone wants to. We still vote on them, or we can wait on them. See some nodding, but
Can I
I said
ask
two
a
things.
question?
Yeah.
And maybe Cindy, I don't know if, just in general, maybe this should have been under other matters, but it seems like we get, sometimes claims come in a day late, a couple days late. Are we the same with our vendors? Are we paying our bills on time, or are we?
We
late,
are.
2 days late?
We've been paying them on time, yes. It's just been a matter of transitioning to our new system and getting the right output for reports and stuff for you guys to look at this last few times. But yes, our vendors are getting paid on time.
So the transition to the new system is not affecting anyone else, but it's affecting us.
Unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Counselors, any motions on claims? Any questions? Greg, you're looking to say something.
I'd just like to push it off till next council meeting. to
Okay.
approve.
You want to make official motion that then? Is there a motion to well, not deny claims, it's a motion to continue claims. Is that your motion?
I'd like to make a motion to continue claims till the next meeting, which is
It'll be June
June
7th.
7th, 2021 at 7 PM, please.
All right, I will, I'll second that motion because I like stuff to be on time. All in favor of Councilor Melton's motion to continue claims? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Claims are not approved, well, they're continued by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Anyone want the honors to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Got a first from Vice President Plunkett. I'll second Councilor Colt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. We are adjourned by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 7th, 2021 at 7:00 PM here in the Zionsville Town Hall chambers, unless noted otherwise. Final notice will be posted in compliance with Indiana open door law. Thank you all.